Moving on to depression. Depression is something I've experienced after every hypomanic period, as well as other times outside of a cycle. But that's not the case this time. Well, not in the same way anyway. I think many people can relate to depression and are only too aware of the warning signs. However, many may not have experienced the complete depths that may be reached by someone suffering clinical depression as set out by the NHS website. However, I would like to offer some suggestions as to why those with manic depressive illness may seem to experience deeper depressive cycles than others. The first reason I would suggest is that, in my experience, depression has generally followed a high, elevated mood, in some cases an ethereal state. The change is so significant in a similar way to the varying impact on the ground of two stones being dropped from significantly differing heights. The one dropped from higher level impacts the earth with more force and creates a larger hole. The second reason is the fact that many sufferers will have experienced the depressive cycle multiple times before, and whilst they may have coping mechanisms, their own history would suggest they maybe won't work. And even if they do, what's the point? It will happen again. The third reason is linked to the manic period. These are periods where rash decisions are made, inappropriate things may be done or said. The person may have had a high libido, leading to relationship issues, or they may simply have lost significant amounts of money or have run up huge debts. Some of these are probably not dissimilar to the issues of non-bipolar related depression. But with manic depressive illness, this could have happened to such extremes during the period of invincibility and potentially over such short periods that the shock factor can be much greater and the fall much harder. Recovering from depression can be a long process. Indeed, my previous period of depression lasted over 18 months and followed a crisis event and 5 months of hypomanic build-up. The process will almost certainly involve medication, potentially with regular review and rebalancing. It may involve talking therapies, although my advice, and the advice of many a psychiatrist, is to balance the medication first before considering psychotherapy. It will also involve time, and generally quite a lot of time. The process can be assisted by making small changes in your life, adopting a routine, getting plenty of sleep. Although I'd also advocate that for me, too much sleep hinders the recovery in the sense that I feel unproductive and insignificant. In fact, these are similar to many of the suggestions I would make for controlling mania and the illness as a whole. However, and above all else, one of the best cures for depression is time. The biggest problem is that nobody can put a figure on that time. Indeed, after numerous cycles of deep depression, I'm still unable to know how long my own depressive states will last. And that in itself can be a huge factor in prolonging that state. As for a mixed state, having had no prior knowledge, I would say a mixed state is potentially one of the strangest, least understandable and hardest parts of a manic depressive cycle I've experienced. Many manic depressives will never experience a mixed state. Some may experience it longer term, others will, as I have and still are doing, experience at a more extreme level with significant and regular mood swings. Unlike a single phase manic or depressed cycle, a mixed state has all the hallmarks of mania, whilst the sufferer also has mood levels more representative of depression. In my own experience, the sheer exhilaration prevalent in previous states of mania was masked by an underlying low mood. Further, whilst I did experience anxiety, I was also feeling excited and could not decipher whether the anxious excitement, was simply driven by nerves. Yes, I was sleeping less, but I'd reduced my medication around 9 months prior, and sleeping levels were returning to a normal level anyway. In fact, the first time I experienced any level of highs on a near stratospheric scale was only a day or so before hitting a drastic low, only to return a couple of days later in the shape of crisis. Not only was I unable to spot the signs, but I was also powerless to stop the progression. And even if I had, in the short space of time, noticed what was building, I no longer had the antipsychotic medication that would have worked, it having been withdrawn entirely months earlier. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight, the sleep patterns were probably a stark sign that my mood was beginning to swing. That added to overall excitement, the odd garbled conversation, a little more confidence than usual, and a few other factors that are often part and parcel of my hypomania should have acted as warning signs. However, they didn't, as I knew I was not hypomanic because my mood was not soaring, and if anything, it was on the low side. As I've stated several times previously, I've not experienced a mixed state before. And as I now know that this can happen and that the warnings are less apparent, I hope to be better armed next time. Recovery from a mixed state is one I am unable to answer outright, as I'm still not fully recovered. Unlike depression, where the abyss can be cleared by climbing out slowly, steadily, even heavily, a mixed state doesn't have the same level of security. I feel that I am always potentially a few hours away from crisis, primarily because I have low mood, impulsiveness, a sense of adventure, a feeling of infallibility, and a nagging but real paranoia. I have increased my antipsychotic medication, have tried to adopt a better routine, and have tried to get more rest. However, change can and does happen at the flick of a switch, and I'm left in a severely hypermanically depressed mood and close to crisis. However, as with all mental illness, I'm almost certain the answer is simply a matter of time. But given the fact that I feel fit and well, physically and psychologically, much of the time, it's extremely difficult to accept that sudden swings in mood can still occur and cause a complete rebound into a mixed state.